Hey everyone, George here, and welcome back to the channel. Today let's talk about species compatibilities. This is a subject that comes up all the time with people that I talk to. There's a lot of questions in the comment section about keeping certain types of fish together, and I want to get into that a little bit today. The first thing we're going to talk about is setting up an aquarium and what your intentions are, and giving you a little bit of an idea on some of the things that you should look at as a preliminary before actually setting up your tank. Number one, what kind of tank do you want to put together? Do you want a planted aquarium? Do you want something simple? Do you want a household aquarium where you've got the goofy little trinkets in there and that sort of thing? And there's a lot of different kinds of aquariums out there. There's very serious fish keeping people out there, and that's mainly what this channel is for. But I'm also here to help people that are beginning in the aquarium hobby, and so I want to talk to you as well. But let's talk about the type of aquarium that you're going to set up. What I recommend, number one, is setting up a regional type tank. Now what I mean by that is a South American tank, an Asian tank, an African tank. These are all things that you need to take into consideration before you get really serious about setting up a aquarium for your home, or if you're somebody that's a serious fish keeper and you're going to have more than one aquarium, multiple aquariums, you might want to think about these issues before you set it up. Now, I see a lot of channels out there where they're mixing fish all together, and there's all kinds of issues that go along with that. And I don't recommend doing that, to be honest with you. What I try to do when I set up my tanks is to set them up for a specific area that I am looking to keep fish that are all from that particular area. Now let's talk about the one particular area which I am very familiar with, and that's South American tanks. Now if you're setting up a South American tank, such as a discus tank, maybe a cichlid tank of any kind, an angelfish tank. There's all kinds of different kinds of tanks in South American fish that you can put together. But even though you have fish that are all from the same area, they're not always compatible with each other. And the purpose of this video is to talk about that specifically and to let you know that one of the first things that you need to consider is, are these fish compatible in the sense that the size of the tank is going to be compatible for all the fish and will work? Is it big enough? If it's not, what can you do? What are the decisions you need to make to have the tank that you want, but absolutely having to give a little bit on some of the fish that you might want to put in there? Now, this is something that I see all the time. Let's say you have a 65 to 120 gallon tank, somewhere in that range. People want to keep discus fish. Now that's something I know a lot about because I keep discus fish. But one of the things that you are going to be tempted to do is try to put in Ultim angels or geophagus or other types of larger fish in that same tank, and they're not always going to be compatible. And the reason for that is that all of these fish are extremely territorial. Now when I talk about being territorial, what I'm really talking about is how discus fish, for example, have a pecking order. In other words, they have parts of the tank that they're going to be dominant in, and there is going to be a pecking order. There's going to be a top fish, there's going to be the guy in the middle. You know, you can look at this as a military kind of style thing where you got your general, and you got your captain, and you got your lieutenant, and you got your private, and all of those kinds of things. And the bottom line is that there is going to be this natural pecking order that takes place in a discus tank, for example. Same thing happens with angelfish. Angelfish are going to be very combative, especially if you have mating pairs, which mating pairs with angelfish are going to happen much quicker than they are with discus fish. Discus fish, you may find some mating pairs that develop in your tank, but angelfish, you're going to find that that happens a lot more frequently, and they're extremely territorial. Now, some of the issues that you're going to run into if you're getting into these types of fish is issues with compatibility with your dither fish. In other words, fish such as maybe a school of tetras, maybe some rummy nose tetras, some black neon tetras, some bloodfin tetras. There's so many different kinds of tetras that you can put with these types of fish, but there's some problems with this if your tank is not large enough. Number one, make sure that you have a large enough tank. If you're looking to put a community tank together, something where you're not going to be doing breeding or anything like that, make sure that your tank is big enough so that everybody can have their own space in the tank and not have issues with compatibility or territorial issues. Now, as I said, there's a natural pecking order with discus fish, and there is also some territorial issues that go along with angelfish, for example. Now, other problems you might see is with ram cichlids. There is definitely some territorial issues that go with that. Apistogrammas, same thing. These are all fish that are in the cichlid family, and they're all fish that are going to have territorial issues. Now, one of the first things you want to do is plan your size tank, and you want to think about how many fish you can put into that tank comfortably, whether or not it's going to be a planted tank, whether or not it's going to be sort of a bare bones type tank. The more that you have that's bare bones, the less amount of fish that you're going to be able to put into that tank, because line of sight is going to be an issue. Now, I have seen many times where, for example, in a discus tank, you will see a pair develop, and that pair will start laying eggs, and they'll do this continuously every 7 days to 2 weeks or something like that. When you do water changes, you're going to see these issues come up, and you're going to see that sometimes if those fish are very serious about breeding, you're going to have to make some decisions about that, because compatibility comes up when you have breeding pairs in a discus tank. For example, I have seen discus that will continuously lay eggs and try to breed, and if anything comes near them, including small tetras or whatever, they will literally kill a tetra to protect those eggs. And I've seen this happen in my own tanks, so I'm extremely aware of it. My recommendation to you is, if you get into a situation like that, especially with discus fish, is if you are planning to keep these pair together and breed them, you're not going to be able to do this in a community tank. You're going to have to get yourself a nice 20-gallon cube and do your breeding in that. That's a whole nother video that we'll talk about, but you need to remove those fish, or this is going to continuously go on, and you're going to find that your tetras and your other dither fish, I've even seen them go after corridoras and things like that. So you've got to make sure that if you're having a community tank like this, the compatibility issues are not something that become a problem if you have breeding pairs. The same thing can happen with angelfish. Angelfish become extremely territorial. They will lay eggs on anything that is vertical. Lots of times leaves on a plant, sometimes on a piece of wood. Anything that's in a vertical area. Same thing with discus fish. And you're going to find that the angelfish are just as, in fact, I think angelfish can be much more aggressive even than discus fish about protecting their eggs. So in other words, they will go after a smaller group of tetras in that tank and literally kill members of that school if they come too close to their eggs. So this is something you want to watch for in your tank, and something you want to plan ahead for. If you're going to raise discus fish, if you're going to raise angelfish and that sort of thing, you want to be careful to make sure that if you're going to be doing that and you're going to know that they're going to develop pairs over time, you're either going to have to make one of two decisions. Either you're not going to have a lot of schooling fish in that community tank with them, and you're going to allow them to breed, or you're going to remove them from the tank, split them up, or put them in a breeding tank. Now, splitting them up is always something that is an option as well. You might not want to do that. Maybe you're very attached to those particular fish, and the problem with that is going to be it is natural for them to pair off, and if you want a community tank, you're going to have to take a member of that angelfish community. If you see pairs developing, and you're going to have to remove one of those pairs out of that tank in order to bring a balance to the tank again. Now, other compatibility issues are taking fish from other regions of the world and putting them with South American. Now, we're talking about South American tank today just simply because I want to talk about something that I'm very familiar with. I've done other tanks, obviously I've done that, but I have really focused pretty much on South American tanks. So what I find with a lot of people that are putting South American tanks together is they're throwing a lot of different fish in there from other parts of the world. And a lot of times this just doesn't work. And the problems that will arise a lot of the times is temperature in the water, the types of environment that they may require, the types of substrate that they may require. There's all kinds of little things that can be a problem with compatibility of the fish in these kinds of tanks. The first thing that you want to do, like I said at the beginning of the video, find yourself a part of the world where you like the fish from and try to stick to, if you like an all Asian type tank, you know, look for fish that are all compatible in that part of the world. Do your homework on that. Research it a little bit and understand the size of tank that you're going to need. If you, like I said, if you're going to do a community tank, the type of plants that are native to the area and do best for the temperatures and the water. Make sure that all of your fish are compatible with pH, water hardness, and also temperature. Temperature is one of the most important things that you're going to find. So many people make mistakes with this. I see people buying discus fish, for example, and then trying to put, like I have in this tank here, electric blue Aquarium in there, and the issue becomes that the temperatures for discus fish are not the same as they are for electric blue Aquarium. Now, this is something that's going to kill these electric blues because they just cannot handle the heat. They will just get worn down over time, and you will lose them one by one. Same thing with discus fish. You can't take electric blue Aquarium that you have in a big tank, for example, and add discus fish to it because the temperatures in the tank will not be warm enough for the discus fish. So it kind of goes both ways. But I want you to think about when you're setting up your tank, whether or not you have thought it through, you've educated yourself on the type of tank that you want and the compatibility issues with the fish. Now, if you want to mix fish from different regions, you're going to have to deal with the fact that sometimes this isn't going to work the way you want it to, and there's going to be a lot of stress and anxiety brought to you because you haven't thought this through. And again, the best way to deal with this, as I said, is to do your research, do regional type tanks, do South American. Another great example is African cichlids. African cichlids from Lake Malawi, Victoria, and places like that. These are very aggressive fish. These are fish that are not compatible with tetras from South America and things like this. These are fish that are going to not tolerate other fish in the tank. They won't even tolerate each other in a lot of ways. There's a lot of fighting and stuff that goes on for territory in these types of tanks. So think it through. For example, if you're doing an African tank, make sure that you're getting all of your African cichlids from a particular lake, like Lake Malawi. Get all fish from Lake Malawi so that these fish are compatible with each other and stand a better chance of surviving in an environment that is good for all the fish in the tank, not just some of the fish in the tank. And there are all kinds of different fish that you can get for these tanks that come from these areas. Just do your homework, do your research, and understand water parameters, understand temperature, and understand environments. A lot of times with African cichlids, they don't do well with plants. They like to disrupt the plants and rip them out and do all kinds of things, which is going to cause you a lot of anxiety and stress. You put together a beautiful planted tank, you dump a bunch of African cichlids in there, and you find within a week or two that they're just ripping the plants all up and destroying them. This is something that you need to think about before you set up your tank. So when it comes to compatibility, the biggest thing I believe is that you really need to do your research on where you are getting your fish from. In other words, what part of the world, what kind of a tank do you want? You can go online. There's all different kinds of ideas out there on regional type tanks, and that's something that I would recommend you do your research on. If you want to do a South American tank, a Central American tank, an African tank, an Asian tank, there's just so many different types of tanks that you can do. And I don't want to get into salt water because I don't do salt water. That's a whole other thing, and that's something that is really, I have done salt water in the past, but I don't know enough about it to really educate you on compatibility issues with those kinds of tanks. But I do believe that if you're going to make a community tank and you're going to put something together, that you really need to do your research and check compatibility issues and think about the size of the tank that you're going to need and what type of fish you can put in there. You can do a lot of different things and create a lot of problems for yourself, and you won't even know it because you haven't done your research. Once you do your research, you're going to be so much happier to find that the compatibility of those tanks is going to be so much better if you know where your fish come from and what other fish are compatible with them, so that you have a well-balanced ecosystem in your tank that you're going to be happy with for a long time, and you're not going to have issues that will cause you a lot of stress and anxiety. That's the number one reason why people get out of this hobby, is because of the anxiety and stress that comes with it, that is needless. If you do your homework and you are patient, patience is another thing. You have got to be patient about setting up an aquarium, and you've got to be patient about educating yourself on the type of fish and the type of aquarium that you're going to set up before you ever buy that tank and start to think about what type of fish you're going to put in it. I hope this was helpful information for you today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, and I will get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. I hope this was helpful, as I said, and I hope that when you do finally get that tank and you've decided on the type of tank that you want to put together, that you're going to be really, really happy with it. I'm so excited to see people putting new tanks together, but I wanted to kind of talk about this issue because so many people talk to me all the time about why is this happening and why is this happening, and it's so easy to figure out. Again, thank you for joining me today. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, we're out of here.